Welcome to Conversations from Stritch. Today is Thursday, February 6th. I'm Dr. David Livingston, president of Lewis University, and I'm joined by Dr. Christopher Sint, our provost. It's been a great week here at Lewis. We're kind of into the semester now. It all feels like it's running well. We had our community hour this week, which featured a brown bag news hour, a financial literacy overview, and the Flyer Bowl, which was all great stuff, great activities for the community. Both Dr. Sint and I, oh yeah, there's some puppies to enjoy the community. There was some great stuff there. Both Dr. Sint and I were in DC over the last week. I just got back last night. We had both our annual meeting of the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities. We're one of about 220 Catholic colleges and universities around the country, and we also had some from around the world. And then I also went to the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. That meeting is our kind of policy advocacy group that there's about 1,700 private schools around the country. So this is everybody from, for people in the Chicago area, from Northwestern University of Chicago to Lewis and St. Francis and Dominican. And we're all meeting with senators and members of Congress to lobby on behalf of our students and our colleagues in DC who represent us in Washington, and obviously there's been a lot going on there. It was especially important this year to talk to our senators and our representatives about the ways in which the administration and what's happening in DC is impacting higher education. So I want everybody to know that we, both Chris and I and other members of the team, we are tracking potential changes to law and policy that will impact the community. We remain deeply committed to the safety of our students and our colleagues. And we are committed to the opportunities that a Lewis education provides. And we will be pushing back against those policies that might negatively impact our students' ability to complete their education, to complete it in an affordable way, and to do it in such a way that they are getting the best opportunities from the faculty and staff and people from around the country that can help them to prepare themselves. It's difficult, I will say. What's going on in DC is challenging. We said last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago when we were here, that it can create anxiety. We are working, many people are doing trainings for different people so that they understand their rights, but also just to make sure that people lessen the anxiety and we can keep doing what we're doing, which is we have an amazing group of faculty and staff that support our students, and we want to make sure that people can come to class with a clear mind so that they can focus on what they're doing in class and not be worried about things external to what is going on in class. I do want to draw your attention to one event, and it's connected to this mental health set of issues, so it's a good connection. This Saturday on February 8th, we will have an event that's raising money for mental health at Lewis University. It's called Laugh to Create Awareness. It's at 7 p.m. at the Beverly Arts Center. The event's dedicated to our mental health counseling services here. It provides scholarships for students that are pursuing careers in mental health and also supports our services here. The attendees will get to enjoy a night of laughter from a variety of acclaimed comedians from around the country supporting these mental health services, and tickets are still available. It's a great event. I go most years. I'm not always able to attend. It's funny, I will say. It's like comedy anywhere. Right? Meaning it has all that comes with a comedy show that you might go to. So if you don't like live comedy, then, and all that comes with it, you just got to be aware for that. But it's a great show. Usually it's 3 or 4 comedians. And again, we raise money for really important issues. So Chris, you have some other things to talk about, things that have been happening on campus that we're really proud of.
Yeah, I'd like to share a few things. Great to be with everyone, and maybe after the show you can explain to me why some people don't like comedy.
I will.
I know what you meant. it is a really special night. I look forward to so many people enjoying the night and doing it for that great cause. Last week we had the pleasure, and I think you spoke with Lauren Underwood yesterday. Last week we had the great pleasure of welcoming back Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, who presented Lewis with a check for $950,000 to go towards the semiconductor manufacturing innovation that's done by Professor Jason Kelleher and his research group. The Kelleher Research Group does groundbreaking research for semiconductor manufacturing while collaborating with industry partners, advancing sustainability efforts, and preparing the workforce for the future of semiconductor sciences. Congratulations to Dr. Kelleher and to his whole group. That was a really fun event. It was so fun to be with Congresswoman and to see how much she was enjoying the things that are going on at Lewis, especially the students who are participating in this really amazing research that's going on.
Great.
We're really proud to host Victor Luckerson for a Black History Month featured event on February 12th from 12:30 to 2 in the University Dining Room. Luckerson is an acclaimed journalist and author of Built from the Fire, the epic story of Tulsa's Greenwood District, America's Black Wall Street. In this compelling discussion, he will share his personal journey as well as his professional journey as a writer, researcher, and chronicler. It's free and open to the public, but please RSVP by January 30th, and know that there will also be a Zoom option. Really looking forward to that. We talked about that last time. It's such a great book that we highly recommend it. And also, we're reminded often that you don't have to have read the book to enjoy the presentation. Speaking of which, it's theater season again. The Philip Lynch Theater presents Kodachrome, a play about love, nostalgia, and the seasons, and how we learn to say goodbye by playwright Adam Sinkovich. Performances are February 14th through 16th and 20th through 23rd. And tickets are still available for purchase online at the theater website. The Lewis Athletic Department has announced the Class of 2025 Hall of Fame. 5 new members and 2 teams are to be inducted at the Flyer Red Dinner at the Bolingbrook Golf Course on March 26. The inductees this year are George DiMatteo, Joe Felice, Amanda Farrow, Isaac John Paul, Rita Lakonen, and the 1981 women's volleyball team and the 2001 softball team. Also, Janine Decorante will be honored as the Brother Raymond McManaman LaSallian of the Year at the Flyer Red Dinner. Really looking forward to that. Tickets are available for purchase online at the through the athletics website. Congratulations to all the inductees. Well deserved. On March 26th, the Department of World Languages will be hosting a talk diving into Russia's national security strategies in the 21st century. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Roman Ortega will present an in-depth analysis of both the historical and contemporary factors that impact Russia's defense and foreign policy. This presentation aims to provide students with a comprehensive discussion about how Russia utilizes a hybrid technique of cyber and military technology to reach its security goals. So yeah, that's a lot of great stuff happening, and now you're going to tell us a little bit more about the events happening this week.
Yeah, and I want to say, Congresswoman Underwood, again, reiterated to me yesterday how much she appreciates you, Dr. Kelleher, his research group, Dean White, all the work that's been done to set this up. And we had a conversation, you and I had talked about this before, we had a conversation, she and I did, about potentially another community program funding, which is what it's referred to. People used to call them earmarks, but it's funding to really enhance the community. And they haven't gotten the kind of new guidelines, but everybody's expecting that new guidelines will come out in the next month or two. So I talked to her about a couple projects that we're interested in that we'll probably submit. So, getting that $1 million to enhance our work that the lab's doing on chemical mechanical planarization, which is really just supporting the chips production in the United States and the research that goes into that industry. But she is really she loves that Lewis is in her district. She's very proud of what we're doing. So coming up this week, because I want to get to our guests, but just a few things. Tonight, I want to make sure I say that women's basketball and men's basketball play tonight here against UMSL, which is a really important set of games. The women have played incredibly well this year, as have the men. The men have just had 3 losses by less than 2 points that have all been really difficult to handle, but they're right there with the best of the teams. There's also a Latin dance and pop class tonight at 6. Then on top of that, we have some other things that are going on tomorrow night on February 7th. There'll be BSU Spades workshop that's happening. And then Saturday at the Neil Carey Arena, women's basketball plays Lincoln University, and the men play right after that. I do want to say that at the women's game at halftime, we will be celebrating our coaches from the past. So we have a coaches academy where we celebrate the accomplishments of coaches, either alumni who left and had an amazing coaching career somewhere else, or coaches that were here for a long time and have now retired. And I will say we're honoring women coaches because it's women athlete is the focus of the whole year. So 2025 is focused on female athletes. So we're honoring a whole group of female coaches who have done incredible things over the years. As we've already mentioned, Laugh to Create Awareness is on Saturday night. And then on Sunday, men's volleyball fundraising tourney at the Field House. In addition, we have women's lacrosse is starting their season. It still feels so cold to be playing lacrosse, but God bless them. We have a Super Bowl watch party that'll be on Sunday. And Sunday we have Mass, and then there will be, and this continues, we talked about this last week too, there'll be a virtual opportunity to do Undoc Ally training, which is being trained in how to be an ally for undocumented students, colleagues, people in your family, etc. That's not just one time next week. We have multiple. We've done many of these, and there'll be many more. So keep an eye on the website. There'll be, many opportunities for all of that stuff. There's a Valentine Crash Night coming up on the 10th. That'll be exciting. Alpha Phi Lambda is having a paint night. So there's just a lot of activities that you can see on the screen happening over the next week, and we're really excited about all of these events that are going on. So, look forward to seeing you at some of these. There's just a lot of opportunities to be involved. The Coffee House and Open Mic Night in Darcy Great Room. I always love those open mic nights. So, get your best stuff ready and join on that. We do have some travel athletics that are coming up. We mentioned the Built from the Fire that's up there, and several other events. But then we're going to be moving on to travel for some of our teams. And those teams will be traveling this weekend to softball is going to be in Hawaii. So all of us, I think, wish we were on the softball team right now because they're playing in Hawaii. We also have men's lacrosse, which will be going to Newberry in South Carolina. Everybody's trying to take advantage of the weather. Bowling Bee will be at the Scotty Classic in Jackson, Mississippi. So these events that are coming up are trying to, move our students into that southern travel schedule because of basically trying to get people outside of this weather and being able to compete. So lots of stuff going on. We're excited to have so much activity. It's hard to keep up with, I think, for all of us on campus, but
yeah, that's
no
really
excuses.
Amazing how much stuff is going on.
Yeah.
And if I'm reading between the lines a little bit, if you're on campus and engaged in student activities, you can really ramp up for Valentine's Day.
Yes.
There's a lot of activities related to that, and then you can go to the play, which is about love, on Valentine's Day.
Perfect.
So,
yes.
And I believe there's also, I just heard this yesterday, it wasn't on the list, but I think there's a there's a way to make a reservation at the Brown Dining Hall for like a date.
Oh, date night. Do you get a candle on your table?
Yeah, you get a special meal.
I love this.
Tablecloth and a little place for to sit with some degree of privacy. I can't quite picture that, but yeah.
So ask your partner out on a date.
To the play.
Get a reservation.
I think
go
it
to
might
the play.
be. I think the Brown Hall thing is Thursday night. I think, but
All right.
anyway, there's a lot going on, and I also wanted to mention that on all that athletic stuff, the men's and women's swimming teams
Yes.
are competing in the GLVC.
Oh yeah, the tournament
this
weekend.
week or next week. So that's a big thing, and we wish them the best of luck. So
Yes, absolutely.
I'm really excited to introduce our two guests and have a conversation about January term travel. Before I introduce them, remember that you can email a question through the askus@lewisu.edu email address that's at the bottom of the screen, and we will get that question into the conversation. And if you're watching a recorded version of this on YouTube, we can send the question to our guests and they can get back to you. So I'm really pleased to introduce Professor Dr. Stephen Nawara, who is the professor and chair of the Department of Political Science at Lewis. His teaching and research focus is on American politics with a specialization in elections, public opinion, media, and political parties. His research has been published in journals such as Political Behavior, Presidential Studies Quarterly, Social Science Journal, and the National Political Science Review. And also a student who was in his January term class this last January, or this last term, Kiera Vasquez, is a junior sociology and digital marketing major, and she was enrolled in actually in Dennis Crimmen and Venus Wozniak's interdisciplinary seminar, Christians as the Romans Saw Them. And we'll hear about how those two classes were together on the trip. So welcome to you both. Thank you so much for being here. It's great.
So Chris, before we get started, can I ask you a question before we ask Steve a question?
Yes.
Because you were very involved. So could you talk a little bit about the behind the scenes stuff in thinking about having a January term?
Okay.
Because I think, Steve's going to talk about what actually occurred. But before that, there was a whole group of people who were involved in thinking through how we might allow for this kind of possibility.
Sure, and Steve, by the way, was the chair of the president of the Faculty Senate at the time when this was approved a few years ago. So a few years ago, we had a group of faculty and administrators come together to just look in general at our schedule, how our terms line up, when things start and end, and when commencement is, and all the kinds of things that you talk about when you talk about the schedule. And one of the great ideas that came up through that, which is a thing that's somewhat happens at some other universities, and especially ones that are trying to create a really rich student experience with lots of flexibility, is to have this term called a January term. And it is typically a very short term between the fall and spring semesters, where it's very short and very compressed. Typically you would take one class during that term, not a full schedule, and it might be a single credit class or a full credit class, and it allows some more unusual type things like really intense lab work, or it might allow or it might allow a student to really focus on a topic or on a class that's really hard or that they particularly struggle with, like it would have been calculus for me when I was in college. It really would have been nice to really just spend focus time on that. And it allows for travel, because a lot of our travel study is now shorter term travel, even when it's in the summer or in May and so on. So it gives a nice block. And as you mentioned, the athletes are doing now, it's nice to take a little trip away from the harsh Chicago winters in January. So
I feel like we're going to talk about a couple clubs, but Steve, could you just talk a little bit about the thought you were involved, as Chris said, in establishing the J term, but then you had to actually come up with a class that you had to submit to say, can we do, could you talk about that process, both for our faculty who might want to think about doing one, but then also for our students to understand, because I feel like some student might want to go to a faculty and say, oh, it'd be great to have a J term in Nicaragua.
For example, next year.
I'm sorry. Well, we'll get to that later. Go ahead, Steve.
No, if you would have asked me a year ago, do you have a J-term class line? I would have said no. I was approached by Venus Wozniak in University Ministry and Dennis Kremen in the History Department. And they wanted to put together a travel study program. And since COVID, the university has expanded its semester-long offerings with the Luce program in Rome. But there was now an opportunity for this short-term trip. And the idea was that we were going to bring together kind of different groups of people that wouldn't normally interact with each other necessarily. So we had people who needed interdisciplinary credit. So Venus Wozniak and Dennis Kremen taught Christians as the Romans saw them, which Kara was in. My course is a political science course, politics and civic engagement. It's a social science course in the Gen Ed as well as a civic engagement course. And then also the University Ministry Department has a history of running social justice pilgrimages.
Right.
So we're drawing on that as well. And so almost like the Avengers coming together, we compiled this group of people that some were drawn because of the political science, some for the history, some just needed the credit.
Sure.
And then there was another group of people that just couldn't take a semester off to study in Rome all the time. We made a special effort to recruit aviation and nursing students whose curriculum are really hard to get those semester-long experiences in.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I should have said that before. That was another one of our big motivations for creating this.
Yeah, and so the actual practicality of it, once we put it together, we had to do an application. We had both of our courses have already been offered by Lewis University, so we didn't have to get new courses made, but we did have to adapt those existing courses to make sure that the course outcomes would be met in a travel study. We had to make sure that the contact hours were lined up, and then on my end, I had spent a lot of time moving things around on Blackboard and adapting a 16-week course down to.
So talk a little bit about that. So, because I know you and I have talked about this before, so I think the experience itself was somewhere between 10 days and 2 weeks on the ground in Italy.
Yeah, it's 11 days.
Okay, 11 days. And then there was work before and after. So could you just kind of give people a sense of, as you said, you modified a 16-week syllabus into, I guess, what I would call somewhere around 4 or 5 weeks of work?
Yeah, probably a little less. I mean, so I had...
pre-work, post-work?
Yeah, exactly. I set it up so that some of the course was going to be like an online asynchronous course, probably about half of it maybe. So I had my students who were enrolled in my course read chapters from a textbook, participate in discussion board activities, participate in assignments that get them involved in politics, take actual quizzes, like a real course. And then while we were in Rome, we also visited sites that highlight course themes and held discussions and so forth about that.
And then after they
on
got
return, well, this is one thing I didn't realize was a problem. I turned in my grades very late. I had no idea that grades were supposed to be due.
Like the day after you got back?
Yeah.
So I don't think we said this, but this is the first
This is the first J-term.
Right.
So I didn't know.
It was this year. So
I was trying to imply that's why I asked you the question.
I know. I just forgot to say that.
So
I should have said that in the intro. But this is still a work in progress.
I had a series of reflective essays and a couple more chapters that were due a little bit after, so students had time. And those
and
are
Jason
now
in the
done.
registrar was sending you emails every day. Where are your grades?
No,
Where are your grades?
honestly, I'm kind of lucky because nobody noticed. And so I went to return in my grades, and all of a sudden I couldn't do it. And the deadline is passed. So I had to do one of the...
it's new to everybody.
I'm sure my dean's office is very upset because I had to fill out all the forms.
Yeah. He'll get over it.
We'll fix that.
Yeah,
we'll
so can you just, that kind of... Again, I want to go back to faculty before we get to Kira and the student experience. The experience for you of taking a 16-week course and putting it into, 3 or 4 weeks of assignments, and then I guess I'm interested in, you didn't mention, did students get this, for lack of a better word, the shell, the opportunity to get into Blackboard and start reading assignments? Before Christmas?
Yeah, I opened it up early. A lot of stuff was due later.
Yeah.
But if people wanted to, if they have the time off, I'm not going to tell people not to read. So yeah.
Right. And how long did it take you, and the kind of effort it took you to modify a 16-week course into 3 weeks?
I was lucky because this is kind of a plug for using the course shells that the Faculty Center develops. Because they were already developed when I set the course up originally into weekly modules, I was able to move things in mass.
Yeah.
And so it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
It still wasn't perfect. Like, the first time, you
around.
realize some things are hidden and they're not supposed to be. You have to go back. But other than that, it wasn't as big of a lift as I thought it would be.
Okay.
It was definitely more stressful figuring out the logistics of the travel
Yeah.
rather than when my discussion board is due.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know if you've ever taken 17 people on a subway.
I have.
Yeah.
It's
actually. I've done it in Rome.
it's
I've done it in Rome.
Kara's lucky we didn't lose somebody at the Germany station.
Before we get to that, I want to hear about that. Kira, just maybe tell us a little bit about why you chose, like, how did you get to this place where you were going to choose to do this travel study?
Yeah, so I was actually looking into traveling study abroad when I first came to Lewis.
Okay.
I started spring 2024.
Okay.
And so Chris Swanson was telling me about the Luce program in the springtime, but then I realized, like, with funding and then, like, a lot of stuff going back at home, I couldn't really take a whole semester away. And then I got an email from him saying something about a travel abroad study, like the JAM term. And I was like, oh, so I looked into it, I applied to it, and I saw that I had some classes requirements that I needed to take, so I took Dr. Grumman's class.
Nice.
And that's how I got about that class, which was a really good thing because I really wanted to go to Rome.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then I think I heard before we got on the air that this was your first international
Yes, it was my
trip.
first time.
How did you feel about that?
I was very nervous. The plane ride was definitely something else. I don't like being in the air.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then being with a bunch of people that I did not know. I didn't know any of the professors. I didn't know any of, like, my classmates. It was our first time, but I felt like we all got along like family right off the bat. So it felt like I was just with the second family, and we all took care of each other. They became my brothers and sisters. So
Nice.
That was great.
So
So, go ahead.
How does it? So either one of you or both of you, how does it work? Like, where did you stay? And
Yeah. Well, do you want to answer
yeah.
that?
Oh yeah. So we stayed at Casa La Salle, which was amazing because inside that the place we stayed has the Church of De La Salle. So we did get to visit the church. We went through all the relics, and we actually saw his relics, and we got to see his skull. And it was really nice. It was pretty peaceful. Yeah, it was nice.
yeah, and it's like a dorm kind of feel.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, almost like a dorm or a hotel room, private
Yeah.
bathrooms.
We all had our own place.
For people that don't know what Casa La Salle is, it's essentially a hotel that's run out of the generalate of the Christian Brothers. So the same religious
Right.
order at Lewis
Right.
University. Their headquarters
And where they
is
also
in Rome.
live.
Yeah, they live there
those
too.
who
There's a
are,
whole wing of people who work
stationed
there
in Rome or
professionally.
whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think for those of us that have been there, like, it all makes sense once you're there. But I agree with you. I think some people don't. So the LaSallians, and we're one of 65 universities around the world. There's a group of brothers and other partners that work in Rome. They have this, for lack of a better word, I mean, it is a walled, kind of little compound that has 4 big buildings in it, and they live and work in some of them, and students live in some of them. There's cafeterias. It's all self-contained.
Yeah, it highlights the international nature of the LaSalle network really well. And it was interesting to see the students grasp that when we went to the church. I don't think it was you. It might have been you, because you're sociology. You saw the chapel with Saint Benilde.
I did.
And suddenly, like, it just
wait a
like
minute.
clicked. Like,
Yeah.
wait, Benilde Hall.
Benilde Hall.
Sociology's in Benilde Hall.
Yes, because I was like, wait, this has been Benilde. And I was like, oh my goodness, everything's connected.
yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
really cool.
That's cool.
It is. It is. Yeah,
And
I
it's in a
assume that
great
you-
location that's easy to get to the subway. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
a
city.
3-minute walk to the
Yeah.
subway
Yeah.
station.
Right.
There's a McDonald's on the corner, which some people ate at.
Yes. Yes. They need their little American fix.
Yeah,
They,
but there's a cab stand close by. The subway is safe and quick and affordable.
So I'd like to start with you, Kira, and then maybe have Dr. Nawara comment a little bit. So part of the goal of these kinds of things is as I'm sure Dennis said more than once, using Rome as a classroom. But the idea is that experiential learning, like going to be in the place that you're learning about, it, enhances learning. Like you learn differently. You just mentioned that with Benilde. Like all of a sudden you learn, oh my gosh, there was a Saint Benilde. This was a real person. But could you talk a little bit about, I don't know, you could pick one or two things that happened, places you visited, or that you felt like, Ed, I could have taken this course in Romeoville, but it wouldn't have been the same because here's something that happened that really made a difference in terms of my learning.
Yeah. So we went to the catacombs. I forgot her name.
Love
Was
that.
it
St. Agnes.
St. Agnes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Her story really hit me really deep. She was this 12-year-old girl who devoted her life to God and her faith and the Roman Empire. She was supposed to get married off. And just hearing that story, like, to think of yourself now, like think of a 12-year-old girl now and going through that and choosing her faith. And she was very committed to her faith. And no matter all the things that she went through, she still stayed committed to her faith and was like, I believe in my God, I believe in my faith. And even to the very end. So getting to see her church and then visiting the catacombs, it really hit me very different because if I would have learned that here, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's a tragic story, but it wouldn't have stayed with me and be so significant to me as it was when I was there, seeing all the stories on like the walls and the ceilings. It was really, it really hits you hard, especially when it's silent and you just sit there and you gotta like take it in, take a moment, and you're just staring at her, like her altar, and you're just staring at it and you just feel it, and it just, it really did hit me.
That's great. That's great.
I would say another time that I got very emotional was the Vatican. The Vatican, learning everything about the Vatican, the art, the history, going into Michelangelo's dome. During Mass, during service, I did cry and I did tear up. So it really puts you in a different like position, like perspective of everything, because I was going through a lot and I didn't know like where my faith was going. And once I got there, I felt like this trip really helped me. And that's what we talked about with Venus, like about her pilgrimage.
Sure.
I felt like this brought me back to something where I felt like I was empty and alone, and now I feel like I found something, and I found my family, and I found Christ again.
Yeah, and so I just want to comment on, because it is a special year. So 2025, you were there. I was just with, actually, Brother Carlos. I don't know if Brother Carlos Gomez was there, if you met any of the leaders, but he was just in D.C. with us, with Chris and I last week. And he's the number 2 brother in the world. So he's what's called the Vicar General. And he was telling me over dinner, we sat next to each other at dinner, that Rome, as he said, and he's got this accent, Colombian accent. Rome is just crazy these days, because there's so many people coming in for the Jubilee year. Now, you were there in the first couple weeks of the Jubilee year, the opening of the door and all of that stuff. So I don't know, I assume that you...
The first couple days we were there were packed.
Okay.
Like I had not seen crowds like that.
Yes, this
ever.
is what he was saying.
The square outside the Pantheon was shoulder to
gosh.
shoulder, it was like trying to move through it. And this is our second day, and I'm like, this is gonna be a nightmare. But that was also the weekend of the Epiphany, and that is a major holiday in Rome. And so what it was is a lot of people were off of work, and it was like going on Labor Day weekend somewhere in Illinois. And then once everybody went back to work during the week, it was surprisingly quiet.
Great.
When we went to the Vatican museums later in the week, I think it was a Thursday, I was shocked at how empty it was. I could have twirled in the Sistine Chapel.
Great.
It was
That's great.
Wonderful. So yeah, it
Usually
wasn't that
they're
bad.
just yelling at us.
Yeah, a taxi driver.
It's good that you didn't twirl in this.
Yeah, a taxi driver did tell Venus and Dennis and I that everyone spent all their money at Christmas time. By March, it's gonna really pick up. But so maybe that's the case.
Yeah, well, with the Jubilee year and the celebration across the globe, a lot of people will make their pilgrimage. So Steve, what were some of the highlights of your course? You've taught this course many times. But you've never taught it in Rome.
Never taught it in Rome. So for me, it was trying to demonstrate the differences in a parliamentary democracy from the United States, right? So like we are, in the United States, we are used to government being run a certain way. And now, in Italy, you have a completely different governmental system. Not completely different, but a very different. And so constantly demonstrating the parallels and contrasts was kind of one of my themes. But also I learned a ton from Dennis and Venus as well.
Yeah.
One of the benefits of doing the trip in this way is that we were together a lot. And so all of the people in the course that Kiara was enrolled in were listening to me as well, and all the people in my course were listening to them. And so, if you're thinking about like one of those moments that stand out, we talked about in pilgrimage and kind of what the importance of pilgrimage and how it works, and there's often a kind of a physical suffering that goes on.
Sure.
A pilgrimage isn't easy, right?
Right.
And so one day when we were in Assisi, which we took a side trip to Assisi, by the way.
That's awesome. I love Assisi.
Yeah, and so we walked, it's on a mountain, for those that don't know, it's a medieval city. And as we're walking down the hill to San Damiano Church, where St. Francis received his call, and the crucifix spoke to him and asked him to rebuild his church. We're walking down this hill. It's a very steep incline, and it's through some olive trees, and we saw a boar in the distance running around. It was just like this really peaceful moment, and we get down there, and the church is closed for construction. And it was a far walk down this steep hill, and so it's just like, okay, if that's the worst thing that happens on this trip, it's not that big of a deal. But then we had to go up the hill,
Miserable.
which was a steep walk. And so, but what was interesting about it is that we all walked at our own pace. We set a time. We said, like, okay, we're going to meet back at the Church of St. Clair at the top. And we all kind of went up at our own pace. So a couple people went really fast. They happened to be the one that just got out of the military. Another one's a student athlete. And so we all kind of staggered in at different paces on our own. And when we got up to the top, we went into the church. We saw this crucifix that St. Francis saw. We went to the tomb of St. Clair by ourselves. And so it was kind of like a journey, a little mini journey inside the pilgrimage.
Did you really spend the night in Assisi or no?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah, at the base of the hill, there was a retreat center, Franciscan retreat center.
I got to say that I think Assisi is a totally different place after all the buses leave. I don't know if you had that experience, but I've been there a number of times, and it feels like they're, when you're there and then it kind of shuts down, it's so much more peaceful because it really is. There's so many people there. They have all 50 buses that show up with all their people. And did you take the train up to Assisi?
Yeah, we took a train from Rome to Assisi.
Yeah.
One of the things that almost went wrong that didn't is that we almost got to see it after the buses because the bus we had to take down to the hotel.
So you did have to take one of those little buses.
Yeah, well, a few students got lost and we almost missed the bus. So when you said that, that's why I started laughing.
Right. Well, those are all great. So Kira, how about, you said that the plane ride was kind of a new and somewhat difficult experience. What about taking trains in Europe?
Oh, taking the trains in Europe, we talked about that. It kind of like DC. Like if you've been to DC, you kind of like, you could be in the train. It was very scary at first because I was like, I'm in a country, I don't know anybody. I could barely like figure out their language, and it's just like so different. But I was very fortunate to have like my group of friends that we were never alone. I was never alone on the train. Our professors were always with us, and when we did have our free time, we stayed as a group. So none of us ever let anyone go alone anywhere. So I think that's a different experience if I were to go on a train alone. But it was definitely very crowded, very like, do we sit here? But everyone was very nice and be like, oh, like you walked a long time, especially after walking, like especially when we were in Assisi and we walked up all the way from San Damiano. My legs were definitely tired. Like my legs, I feel like I grew so much muscle from that.
That's great.
I'm going to make a statement and tell me if I'm wrong or right, but it feels like it was nice for you, Kira, to be having your first international experience as a university experience where there's trusted advisors and guides and other students to help you along the way, help each other along the way. And for Steve, in a way, you experienced that as a teacher. Obviously you have lots of international experience, but having to be responsible for losing people, not losing people,
That's
and
the key.
all
Not
that.
losing them.
You had Dennis there, who's very very
Dr.
knowledgeable
Kremen
about
is
Rome.
a Rome expert. He's led 20-something student groups over the years.
Yeah,
So just
yeah.
having his expertise,
helped.
knowing,
Yep.
like in his head, he kind of knows, like, okay, in order to get to St. Peter's by 9:30, we need to leave by
just
such
like
and such time.
just like we would in Joliet or
Yeah.
Chicago or something. It just
Dr.
has
Kremen's the best. Like I took that picture of him in the Vatican. I was like, Dr. Kremen, say cheese. Just like he very inspired me. Like the way he teaches, the way he's so like dedicated to everything. Even like I've never been a fan of history, and he switched that around. Like the way he would point at things, make us think about things, ask us questions, because he got everybody involved. Even if they were in Dr. Nawara's class, he's asking all of us questions.
Sure,
And that's why it all stuck with me. And it made me want to write in a journal to like remember every single thing that Dr. Kremen told us.
That's cool.
Well, you know what I love about that? I think the three of us have certainly focused on that in our careers, but I think what a good liberal arts education does, and this class, it sounds like it did for you, is it exposes you to things that you didn't think you liked. Now, Chris still doesn't like calculus, but we'll set that aside.
Doesn't come up very often, believe me.
It doesn't. The derivatives.
Statistics, yes.
But I think part of what you're saying is when you have a great professor and you have an experience like this, you'll be more interested in history 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Like I love reading history now. It wasn't my favorite subject when I was an undergrad, but then you travel a little bit, you have some great professors, and that can also happen with literature. It can happen with sociology. It can happen with, philosophy. It can, political science even. We'll get political science. But I think that exposure and that like, wow, I didn't think history could be like this. I just thought it was a bunch of dates that I had to memorize in high school, right? So I think it's great, and it's a testament to really all three, real gratitude to the three of you for doing this, and to Chris Swanson and everybody else that was behind the scenes making sure it happened. But I just think it really does, and maybe I don't want to, I'll ask you, Kiera. So would you like to travel internationally again?
Of course. I'm actually planning on traveling to South Korea for the fall.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. The Band-Aid's ripped off now.
I know, right?
Let's start checking off the different
Well, that
continents.
was going to be my point before. I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but
No,
my
it's-
experience, I think Chris's experience,
very
Steve's
much
experience.
so.
I did a study abroad throughout Latin America my senior year of college, and I have traveled a ton since then. And at any opportunity I get to travel around the world, I want to do it because I'm fascinated by people and culture and just the way that what I find is people are so similar and yet also so different. Everywhere they're packing their kids' lunch, they're getting them to school,
Yeah.
they're worried about paying the bills. It's true, anywhere in Asia, in the United States, anywhere around the world.
Yeah, I even talked to Venus about the Philippines,
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
they
they
would go and they
yep.
help.
Yeah.
So I thought I really liked what it was all about, and she told me I'd be a great fit. And I was like, well, you know what, that does sound pretty fun to
right.
go.
Well, you're just going to you got the travel bug for sure.
I do.
That's great. Any last
So we
comments,
encourage
questions?
No, I just wanted to make sure we encourage students who are watching to contact the Study Abroad office if they're interested and inspired to find out how to get connected to Chris Swanson and others around getting information about study abroad. And we really encourage faculty to think about always at all times of the year, but especially Jan term to.
How many opportunities, I don't know if anybody knows this, how many opportunities this J term for traveling, and how many do you think we'll have next January? Or what are we
I think this
hoping
was
for?
the only course that went this year, I believe. We advertised three or four, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'd love to have 5 next
One
January.
point I can make, if I can jump
Yeah,
in,
please.
is that one of the benefits of the J term is that it is billed as a spring course.
Yeah.
So it is part of someone's spring block tuition. And as a result, if you take a J term course, it just rolls into spring as part of your up to 18 credits.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to pay an extra tuition bill
Right.
if you
Yeah,
are
and you
doing a
can
travel
take
study.
one fewer course.
Yeah.
You can
And
either
the rest-
take one fewer course, or you could still take 5
Yeah.
and get 3
the
credits
extra-
ahead for the
yeah.
same price.
Exactly.
So you can do 15 or 18, so you can
Yeah.
kind of play that how you want.
Yeah, so I think knowing that, I think it kind of, using the
Yeah.
calculus in the student's head
Yeah,
can
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
make it a little bit more of an attractive opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Any last comments from any of the three of you Kara, any advice for your fellow students?
I say just go with the open mind. Don't be afraid. My family, I was talking about how scared I was for weeks, and then it came to it, and we got along with everybody. I got to eat some great food. I got to hear some good music, and just experience a whole different country and a whole different culture. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us
you.
today. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Appreciate the
Thank you
opportunity.
very much. Well, everyone, that's our show for today. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Please stay safe, take care of each other, take care of yourself. Many blessings to you and all those you love.